You guys mind waiting a minute for HMS to join?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
My name, you can join my stream in the meeting room chat.
Alright, I've resumed the recording.
Alright, so today we're going to be looking at shot calling in clan battles and how it's going to relate to our clan and how we're going to structure it. So, the calling structure at GGWP, there are going to be two roles we're going to have people doing. So, the first role is going to be the making of the strategies that we will be executing in clan battles. So this is often done before and during the clan battle season actually starts. So the strats will be drawn up for all of the maps in the clan battles rotation. They usually announce these a week or so before the actual season. And this will be done by a group of the clan strategists. It'll be done using the wildstactics.com website, or I don't know what the suffix is. Point is, we'll be looking at what chips we'll be using, how we'll be splitting them in which flank, where we will be positioning them, and also looking at what we'll be doing the same thing on different maps, etc. So if you're interested in this, the role that we'll be giving will be the role of naval strategist. And then the other aspect of shot calling that we'll be looking at, and this is what most people know calling is, and this is the focus fire, the position here, and in general, the adaptation of the strategy made before to account for enemy movements, to account for how HP trades are going, and so on. So the role for this will be naval tactician. So you don't need to have any experience calling to be a caller for this clan, right? We're focused on improvement, we're focused on learning, we're focused on helping players become better. So I don't care if you have experience or not. I know Hans doesn't care. You'll get the experience here and ideally improve. And you don't need to do both roles, right? If you want to help making the strategies, if you think that's interesting, but when you play clan battles, you just want to chill and follow orders, that's fine. If you want to call, but you don't think that you're going to be good at making strategies, or you just don't want to make strategies, that's fine too. So we already covered this. An important thing to know is when we're actually making the strat, only people with the raw naval strategist will have input on the creation of the strats. So this is to be done not to silence the clan members or anything, but it's so that when we're actually having these meetings, it doesn't take us hours on end to just develop a strat for one map, right? 3 to 4 people will be much quicker to come to a conclusion than 8 or 9. And then clan members can bring up their concerns and their ideas for improvements to the strat. For example, let's say you're playing Haven, you're playing a Des Moines, and you go to where the strat says you should put a Des Moines and you find that you're absolutely worthless there. Then you go to the strategies feedback channel, you write Haven Des Moines position, absolutely worthless, not within range of anything, and that's fine, right? Just put your ideas there, put your feedback there, and don't go on during a clan battle being like, this strat fucking sucks, get the shit out of my face. No, it goes in there. And then debate on the strats will take place in competitive discussion. So obviously the strategies will change throughout the season. We're not going to say, all right, the strat we made on week 1, that's going to be the strat we're going to be sticking with the whole time. And meetings will be called minimum weekly to change them and adapt them to the shifting meta. So when we're actually in game, the hierarchy is going to work like this. The highest ranking player, so probably me or Sila, or in the case that someone else wants to practice a fleet commander, that's fine. They'll be in charge of the major decisions for that match, as well as the role of a flank commander on their side. The other tactician present will be a flank commander, and they'll be in charge of focus fire, smaller positioning decisions, move closer to the island, support that, and so on. And they'll also be asking the fleet commander for permission to make a larger fleet movement. So it may sound like the fleet commander is completely in charge and the flank commander is just decorative or anything. That's not what this is like. This is done so that both sides can communicate with each other. And let's say you decide that you're gonna have to kite on your flank, so that the commander on the other flank can adapt his strat to that. Because if you're kiting on your flank, enemy ships are gonna start moving up on your flank, and that's gonna open up crossfires for them on the other side. So it's to keep both sides aware of what's happening, keep the communication flowing. And then the most important thing, players have to listen to caller orders. However, as a caller, you have to recognize you can't see everything. You're not aware of everything. So if a player thinks that the orders will get them killed, or the orders are too risky, or there's something better the player wants to do, the player can communicate that to the caller. And the caller isn't just going to shut that down and say, oh no, my ideas are the best. A super important part of calling, and one of the most important things in any competitive video game, is you're not the one who's going to be in charge of everything. You need to listen to the feedback of your players. You need to listen to the things they see that you may not see. and adapt how we're going to play that map and adapt how we're going to play that game based on that. So this is the most important part. This is the how to actually call. How do you be a tactician? So when you're a flank commander, your objective is you're going to keep your flanks players on track. You're going to stay focused on executing the strat properly, and you're going to make sure that communication is flowing, because communication wins games. So you always want to be calling focus fire. So you'll have a primary target. Let's say focus down this Stalingrad, or if there's more than one Stalingrad, focus down, let's say, Sage. And then your secondary target should be called at all times in case that primary target goes dark, so that DPM is not being wasted. Additionally, you want to have good game sense, right? You want to look for opportunities to push or signs that your flank needs to kite. You need to see how you're doing in the trades, if you're winning or if you're losing. And based on that, are you going to be able to hold your flank? Are you going to be able to push? Or are you going to have to kite away? Always be aware of the status of your players. Always be aware of the status of your ships. And always be aware of what the next few minutes are going to look like for you on that flank. Because based on that is how you're going to start positioning your ships. Are you going to start turning away to kite? Are you going to start positioning in for a coordinated push, etc.? And then important is you need to communicate with your fleet commander. I didn't mention this before, but you need to keep him aware of how your trades are going so that he can plan accordingly. And you need to let him know what your plans are. Are you going to kite, push, etc.? So to continue on that, you need to make sure that his flank is ready to deal with the consequences of what goes down on your flank. And he's also going to be communicating with you what movements he's making, how he's doing over there. And you need to be aware of that when you're making your plans. For example, if the other flank is getting absolutely swept, you may need to push because we're going to be losing a cap. If your flank is getting absolutely swept, they're going to have to push because we'll lose a cap. If we're holding and we're winning trades, then we don't need to push on either side because we're winning the trades and we're going to win the game if we stay in the status quo. And then communicate potential crossfires, both your potential crossfires. Does one of your players have the opportunity to crossfire the enemy team on the other side? Is there an enemy ship on your side who's shooting at your other flank? Point this out to your team. Make sure that they're aware that both the flanks are going to be interacting. And make sure that you're getting the better out of these interactions and you're not pointing out that, oh, there's a Stalingrad shooting across the map at you. Be careful. And don't neglect your duties as a player. You're still in a ship. You're still one of the 7-8 ships that we have in that game. And we need you to stay focused on also calling out DCPZ for yourself, not giving broadside to the enemy, being a part of a push, being a part of a kiting flank, etc., and still playing to the best of your abilities. So that's the most difficult part. It's going to be multitasking between having an awareness of the general game and an awareness of your portion of the game. So as a fleet commander, you're going to be in charge of directing general fleet movements as well as the roles of a flank commander mentioned previously. So important to this are two things. You need to have excellent knowledge of the strat. You need to know why ships are placed where they are, why are the flanks split the way they are, why are ships at this island, why is this Stalingrad kiting, etc. Because if you don't understand the strat, if you don't know why things are the way that they are, then you're going to have a lot of trouble directing fleet movements properly and adapting the strategy while still maintaining its strong points. And then you also need to have excellent game sense and minimap awareness. You need to be able to look at the minimap, determine where potential crossfire threats and opportunities are, what ships are vulnerable to CVs on both teams, and what movements will help give your team an advantage. And another thing that I haven't put on here is, in the unfortunate case that there are CVs in the game, you need to be very clear on who is in charge of communicating to the CV, where you should be dropping, where you should be placing fighters, etc. Because if you're in a situation in which all of your players get to call for CV help and the CV has to try and listen to all of them, you're going to end up with A, an ineffective CV, B, a burnt out CV player, and C, frustrated players because they feel the CV isn't listening to them. So at the start of the game, define who's going to be in charge of the CV, right? And then whenever the CV is deciding what to do, he's going to go to that person, and that person is going to tell him, all right, you're dropping this Stalingrad, you're placing fighters on this player, etc. So,
can I add something real quick?
Sure.
Or actually, you have it here, but what I was going to say is that as a flank caller, or as a caller in general, you kind of set the tone for the other 6 people in the voice comms. So if you're like complaining about your RNG or like generally just raging, you're not like you're gonna have a less effective team because of morale, and that really does affect team cohesion a lot and general team skill. Like you're not gonna personally, I wouldn't want to play with a caller who's like raging all game about their RNG or whatnot. So that's something to keep in mind.
So, as Hans was saying, you're in charge of keeping your team spirits up. If everyone's upset, if everyone's angry, if everyone's blaming RNGs for their losses, that's on you, right? You're the leader in the situation, and you're gonna set the tone, as you said. So the key to this, at least in my opinion, is to avoid blaming anyone for anything but a win. You're never ever gonna directly blame someone for a loss, as much as it might be true. It shouldn't be done in, let's say, public, or they could in public would be with the other 5 players in the team there, because if you start blaming other people, the person being blamed is going to be resentful towards that, and it's not going to help the whole team improve and see where they did worse. So if your players start blaming another player, you shut that down. That's not allowed here. We were not going to be attacking each other. It's gonna fuck us over for clan battles. Keep it up. It's just no bueno. And then you're allowed to blame people for wins. If someone put off an excellent play, if they survived, if they did what was right, if they played well, call that out. Let them know that they did well, and then you also have to congratulate everyone on a good game. And then a rule that you should maintain is there's no raging in chat. No, that was stupid. Stupid Stalingrad's overpowered. Smolensk's overpowered. Stupid TVs, etc. That's not conducive to anything. It's gonna make everyone else mad. It's gonna make everyone else upset, and it's not gonna help us see how we can improve as a team and as individual players. So if someone starts raging, say no raging in chat, and just shut that down. But don't. I've been in different clans that have different viewpoints on how battle comp should be. Some clans really don't care. They're just like, oh, whatever, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. Just absolute chaos. And then some clans are super strict, like only talk about clan battles, comms clear for everything else. And I think both approaches have their merits. It's more fun to play in a clan that's a bit more chill about that. But on the other hand, you're going to lose more games if you're not communicating effectively. However, if you're playing in this super rigid militaristic structure, you're not going to have too much fun, right? It's not it doesn't feel like a very welcoming or enjoyable community to be a part of. So here at GGWP, we're going to go for something that's going to be a bit of a mix of that. If a caller or another player says comms clear, shut the fuck up, right? That's it. Comms clear means no more talking about anything. You can resume your conversation about the rest after, but for now we need to focus on the game. Especially if a caller says it. But outside of that, you can kind of talk about other stuff, etc. Be chill, be happy little people. I don't know. So to continue on managing morale is how players like to blame losses on strategies. I've been guilty of this before. I played like shit, and then I thought, oh, this strat is horrible. This ship doesn't work for this. This map is bad. And as much as part of that can be true, it won't help. That's what the strategies feedback channel is for you to put constructive feedback on, I don't think this strat is right to put this ship here because A, because B, because C. And if players start thinking that a strat is dumb or it doesn't work, they'll stop following it, and more importantly, they'll stop listening to the caller. And if you're a clan battles team that isn't communicating effectively, you're a glorified randoms team and you're not going to win any games, especially not at the Typhoon level. So as callers, our responsibility is we don't blame the strat for a loss. What should we have improved? What can we have done differently, right? What can we improve on both the player side and on the strategy side, as opposed to blaming either one for too much of the loss? So, and then the most unpleasant part is forcing people to listen to you. Now, in an ideal world, this wouldn't be an issue. Everyone would listen to the caller. Caller wouldn't have to shut any people down, etc. But it's not going to be like that. So you need to be forceful, right? You're the person in charge of the clan battle team. You're the person in charge of making sure people do their thing. And you can't let them walk all over you. I know it sounds militaristic or some shit, but it is what it is. If players stop listening to the caller, we lose matches. And none of us want to lose. So if this is a repeat issue, if people aren't following instructions, people are going off on their own, remove them from the team if you have a sub, and contact me or Hans for assistance.
if I can add something to that.
Of course.
There's something to be said about having trust in the caller as well. So you need to make sure that your players can trust you and you're not being overly harsh as well, because that just makes it unenjoyable to play with that caller, and it also kind of affects team cohesion. So if you want to make people listen to you, they need to trust you, and they also need to respect you to some extent. And that's kind of the hard part about being a fleet commander, and then still like being, I guess, being forceful but not being too harsh, I guess.
Yes, it's not so much about shutting people down, so much as you listen to them, they listen to you, but in the end, it's going to be your decision which way they go, right? And there have been numerous times in which either I've been a caller or and I've been wrong, right? And the player has pointed out, hey, if I move over here, if I rotate this way, I'll give broadside to this stalling rod and get absolutely deleted. And they're right, and I admit I'm wrong, and I changed the strat, I changed the plan to account for that, right? There's nothing wrong. There will never be anything wrong with admitting you are wrong. It doesn't make you seem weak. It doesn't lessen your authority. It makes you seem like a better leader. So if you're wrong, and if a player's pointed out something, admit it. You change the strat. We won't do this. We'll do something different. That's fine. However, if you tell a player, "Hey, I need you to focus fire on this ship," and then they start just HE spamming some random ship kilometers away from the ship you're supposed to be focusing on, even though they have a clear shot, you can just say, "Hey, man, we're focusing this ship." If you have a player who's not going to flank he's called, and he's like, "No, I think I'll be better over here," you tell him, "Hey, no, you're coming over here," right? And if they continue to just not do what they're called, eventually you're gonna have to do something about it, because it becomes a 6v7, and nobody likes a 6v7. But on the other hand, you don't want to be abusing your power. You're never going to be right all the time, and playing with a caller who won't listen to his players, who just follows the strat rigidly 100% of the time, even when everything's going to shit, that's not fun for anyone. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question regarding like the CV player. So you know, I play CVs. So you said something about someone guiding the CV maybe, or helping them out with like choosing who to maybe drop or drop fighters on.
Mm-hmm.
So would that be like the fleet commander or the flank commander, or could it be anyone?
It won't be a non-caller, obviously.
Okay.
But let's say me, Hans, and let's say Plains decides to become a caller. Let's say me, Hans, and Plains are all in the same game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then me and Hans go to the same flank, and Plains goes to the other flank. Then we'd have Plains be a flank caller. Let's say I'll be the fleet commander, and then maybe Hans would be in charge of directing the CV.
Oh, okay.
So that way each person doesn't have a huge amount of things on their plate. But
So one thing about being the carrier player is that you have access to information that the callers do not. So you can move around the map, see enemy HP. You can see your own team's HP, what's going on every flank, in a way that the main caller might not. So pointing out that information to your callers and to your team in general is something that is crucial for the carrier player, and that's something that I'd like to encourage.
Communication wins game. Communicate everything. Did you see an enemy drop torps that aren't heading anywhere? Note that enemy doesn't have torps. An enemy DCP, you say it. Is an enemy looking low, so we should switch focus fire to that enemy? You say it. Can you not drop a target, even though the CV man told you to drop a target? Is he in too much concentrated AA? You tell him that, and he'll give you a different target. Because we're not going to be wasting planes, we're not going to be wasting time on a target we can't drop. And to be frank, some of us aren't. I'm not super experienced with CVs, and if a CV player tells me, "Hey, I can't drop that target," I'm immediately going to say, "Okay, who do you think you can drop instead?" Because in the end, we're listening to each other, we're communicating with each other, and even though I'm the one in charge, or even though Hans is the one in charge, or Plains is the one in charge, or any of you are the ones in charge, the other people still have more information than you do in some cases. They know things you don't. They see things you don't. And if they don't communicate that to you, or if you don't listen to that communication, we will lose. and no one wants to lose.
All right.
Any other questions? All right. Mm-hmm.
So as a caller, you're not really supposed to be micromanaging players because that's something that you should not have to do. Players should be able to make their own decisions, and honestly, as a player, it can sometimes get kind of tiring if you're constantly like just being told what to do all the time. Give them a bit of freedom as well. You shouldn't have to micromanage them, but if there's somebody who's really struggling with what to do, then maybe after the game take them aside or like PM them after the game and talk to them about their role inside the strat and how they're supposed to play. But generally I don't think there's much need for micromanaging players inside the actual game. That's all I had to say.
What do you mean by micromanaging? That can be taken numerous ways.
So micromanaging is like giving them every specification of what they're doing. You're gonna go here, you're gonna load AP, you're gonna shoot this target, and then you're gonna like things that the player should be able to do for themselves. Basically, is what I mean. So you're kind of giving like a general. The caller is kind of giving like a general idea of what positions they're taking, what they're doing. And the player should be able to figure most of it out by themselves, in my opinion.
What the way I call is focus on at the start of the game, follow the strat. Strat says you send 2 Des Moines and Stalin this way, a Hindenburg and 2 Stalins the other way, you split that way. They go to the general positions that are shown on the map. Then I, as a flank caller, will say, we need to focus this target. Everyone's going to focus this target, right? And then if I, as a caller, say, we need to radar this destroyer, or hold your radar until the destroyer is capped half the cap or something. We'll hold the radar until the destroyer is capped half the cap, right? If a caller says we're going to push, we're going to push. If a caller says we're going to kite, we're going to kite. But if a player says, I don't think we should kite, I think we can hold this for a bit longer, then I'll listen to the player. And I'll say, do you think we can hold this? Are we winning the trade? And so on. But the calling style I've seen some people use is they just send ships to different places. They're like, okay, we're going to split 3 and 3, and then they just let it be chaotic. And that's not going to win games at a Typhoon level because you need to have coordinated focus fire. And you need to have coordinated fleet movements, right? One ship pushing alone is a vulnerable target to CV. 3 ships pushing together, they're protected from the CV, they're more firepower. There's more hydro, more radar in the area, etc. And that's not so much micromanagement as fleet movement. It's you direct the players, you point them at a ship, and you say go. That's what I think our calling style should be like, especially to get the Typhoon. Will that be all?
Anyone have anything to add? Anything to ask? Anything to say?
Alright, if you're interested in the caller making strats with both, contact me or Han. We'll get that set up. There's no requirement for it. There's no, we need you to have years of experience in a Typhoon plan or anything like that. As long as you're willing to learn and you're willing to listen, you're in. Thanks, guys.